On the cold morning of January 15, 1947, Los Angeles awoke to one of the most gruesome discoveries in its history. In a vacant lot near Leimert Park, a young mother pushing her baby in a stroller noticed what appeared to be a broken mannequin discarded in the grass. The pale figure was stark against the dull winter earth, its limbs stiffly arranged. But as the woman drew closer, her curiosity gave way to horror. It was no mannequin, it was the body of a woman, cut cleanly in half at the waist, her face mutilated and a grotesque grin carved by someone with surgical precision. The sight was so shocking, so unnatural, that she immediately shielded her child's eyes and fled to call the police. Within minutes, the lot was swarming with officers, journalists, and morbidly curious onlookers. News of the crime spread like wildfire, capturing the attention of a city already fascinated by scandal, glamour, and violence. The woman would soon be identified as Elizabeth Short, a 22-year-old aspiring actress who had come to Los Angeles with dreams of stardom. In death, she would become immortalized as the Black Dahlia, an icon of tragedy whose story still haunts the world nearly 8 decades later. Elizabeth Short's life was marked by contrasts, as sharp as the lines of the city she sought to conquer. With her raven black hair, porcelain skin, and striking blue eyes, she turned heads wherever she went, yet beneath the glamour was a young woman carrying burdens far heavier than her outward charm suggested. Born in 1924 in Massachusetts, Elizabeth was the third of 5 daughters in a family rocked by hardship when her father abandoned them during the Great Depression. She grew up chasing fragile glimpses of stability, bouncing between relatives' homes, all the while nurturing a fascination with cinema. Hollywood represented escape, reinvention, and the promise of a brighter destiny. By the mid-1940s, she had made her way west, clutching not only her ambition but also the nickname that would define her, the Black Dahlia, inspired by her penchant for black clothing and the popular film The Blue Dahlia. Friends remembered her as friendly yet mysterious, magnetic yet secretive. She floated in and out of social circles, befriending servicemen, nightclub owners, and Hollywood hopefuls, always chasing opportunities, but never quite catching them. Her dreams were vast, but her reality was precarious. Small jobs, unstable romances, and a longing that Los Angeles never seemed willing to fulfill. In the end, the city that promised her everything gave her nothing but a legend. Written in blood, Elizabeth's story began far from the lights of Hollywood. Born in Boston and raised in Medford, Massachusetts, she was a child when her father faked his own death by abandoning the family, leaving her mother Phoebe to raise 5 daughters alone. The weight of this betrayal never left Elizabeth, shaping her need for affection and stability in later years. As a teenager, she struggled with chronic asthma and underwent surgery for lung issues, which left her frail yet determined to live life vividly. She dropped out of high school in her sophomore year and worked odd jobs, but her gaze was fixed westward. Letters to friends and boyfriends were filled with daydreams of movie roles, glamorous clothes, and romantic adventures. When the war began, she moved frequently, living in Florida and California, chasing opportunities and companionship. Despite her hardship, she carried herself with elegance, often remembered for her tailored dresses, carefully applied makeup, and magnetic smile. To many who met her, Elizabeth seemed destined for something extraordinary, though no one could have imagined that her name would echo not for her acting, but for the grisly mystery of her end. Los Angeles in the 940 years was a city of contradictions, a place of booming opportunity and shimmering wealth, yet shadowed by crime, corruption, and disillusionment. Elizabeth slipped into this world with the dream of becoming an actress, like countless others who flooded the city. She spent time in Hollywood nightclubs, befriending actors, servicemen, and drifters. She became known for her distinctive style, always dressed in black, with her hair curled into glossy waves. Soon the press and her acquaintances began calling her the Black Dahlia, a nickname that seemed to foreshadow her tragic fate. Despite her outward charm, her life was unstable. She lived in rooming houses, borrowed from friends, and often relied on men for support. Yet she kept her dignity, maintaining a strict line with her suitors. Some remembered her as flirtatious but cautious, always in control of how much of herself she revealed. She dreamed of film roles but never secured steady work. finding herself instead adrift in a city where ambition was currency and naivety was preyed upon. Hollywood was a place where stars were made, but it was also where countless dreams died quietly. Elizabeth's dream ended not quietly but violently, leaving the world with an enduring enigma. In the days leading up to her death, Elizabeth's movements were difficult to track. Witnesses placed her in San Diego with a married man, Robert "Red" Manley, who later drove her back to Los Angeles. On January 9, 1947, he dropped her at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown LA, where she was seen using the lobby telephone. Hotel staff recalled her waiting in the lounge, seemingly nervous as though expecting someone. That was the last confirmed sighting of her alive. Over the next 6 days, Elizabeth vanished into the shadows of Los Angeles. Friends and acquaintances had no word from her, and her family remained unaware of her disappearance. Where she went, who she met, and how she fell into the clutches of her killer remain one of the greatest mysteries in American crime. What is certain is that by the morning of January 15, her mutilated body would be left in a vacant lot as if staged for the world to find. The gap between her last sighting and her discovery remains a haunting void, a blank space into which endless speculation has poured for decades. The crime scene shocked even the most hardened detectives. Elizabeth's body was cut in half with surgical precision, her intestines tucked neatly beneath her torso. Her face had been slashed from ear to ear, creating a permanent, macabre smile. There were no signs of blood at the scene, indicating she had been killed elsewhere and transported to the lot. The staging of her body suggested both meticulous planning and a sadistic desire to shock. The LAPD quickly secured the area, but reporters arrived in droves, trampling evidence in their rush to snap photographs. Within hours, the case became a media sensation. Headlines screamed of fiendish murder and Hollywood horrors. The public was riveted, horrified, and oddly fascinated. For a city already enthralled by crime and scandal, the Black Dahlia case was irresistible, a blend of sex, death, and mystery that mirrored the noir films dominating the theaters. But for detectives, the brutality of the crime raised a terrifying question. Was this the work of a psychopath, a rejected lover, or someone with professional medical training who could wield a scalpel with such chilling precision? The LAPD launched one of the largest investigations in its history. But from the beginning, chaos and confusion clouded the case. Hundreds of officers canvassed neighborhoods, questioned acquaintances, and sifted through anonymous tips. More than 150 suspects were investigated, ranging from ex-boyfriends to drifters to prominent figures in Hollywood. Among them was Robert Manley, the last confirmed person to see her alive. He submitted to intense questioning and even a lie detector test, but police eventually cleared him. Another suspect, nightclub owner Mark Hansen, had offered Elizabeth a place to stay and was rumored to be infatuated with her, yet despite suspicion, no evidence tied him to the crime. Detectives were overwhelmed not only by false leads, but also by the public's morbid fascination. People mailed in confessions, crank letters, and supposed clues. The investigation seemed to be spinning in circles, driven as much by sensational headlines as by genuine police work. In a city rife with corruption, whispers grew that political pressure and backroom deals hindered progress. For Elizabeth's grieving family back in Massachusetts, the circus of speculation only deepened their sorrow. The press played a central role in shaping the narrative of the Black Dahlia case. Newspapers competed to outdo one another with lurid details, some true, many exaggerated. They painted Elizabeth as a femme fatale, a woman of loose morals who courted danger with her lifestyle. Sensational headlines sold papers, but they also tarnished Elizabeth's reputation, portraying her less as a victim and more as a scandalous character. The Los Angeles Examiner even went so far as to notify her mother of Elizabeth's death under the pretense of writing a story about her daughter's success, only to reveal the truth in a cruel twist to secure exclusive information. The media's obsession fed the public's imagination, cementing the Black Dahlia as more myth than reality. While the police struggled to follow legitimate leads, the newspapers fueled gossip, turning the case into a spectacle. The sensationalism may have ensured the Black Dahlia's lasting fame, but it also muddied the waters of truth. complicating an investigation already fraught with difficulties. In many ways, the press became an accomplice to the mystery, ensuring that fact and fiction would forever intertwine in Elizabeth Short's story. As the investigation dragged on, a chilling development occurred. Letters and packages began arriving at newspaper offices, purportedly from the killer himself. One package contained Elizabeth's personal belongings, her birth certificate, business cards, photographs, and an address book, meticulously cleaned with gasoline to remove fingerprints. The sender claimed responsibility for the murder and taunted the police with cryptic messages. The press eagerly published these communications, further inflaming public fascination. The letters echoed the theatrics of the infamous Zodiac killer, decades later, suggesting a murderer who craved attention as much as violence. Detectives believed the items were genuine, though the identity of the sender was never confirmed. These messages deepened the sense of dread, making it clear that whoever killed Elizabeth was not only brutal, but also calculating, determined to control the narrative of his crime. For the public, the mystery became larger than life, a real-world noir that blurred the line between horror and entertainment. Each new headline, each cryptic letter, added to the legend of the Black Dahlia, transforming Elizabeth's tragedy into one of America's most enduring unsolved cases. Among the many suspects, one name has loomed larger than all others: Dr. George Hodel. A wealthy and eccentric physician, Hodel was a man of intellect, charm, and disturbing proclivities. He was known for his artistic tastes, his connections to Hollywood elites, and his questionable moral character. Decades after the murder, suspicions against Hodel intensified when his own son, Steve Hodel, a retired LAPD detective, began investigating him. Steve unearthed evidence linking his father to the crime, including photographs resembling Elizabeth Short and a handwriting match to the letters sent to newspapers. More damning was the fact that George Hodel had been investigated at the time of the murder but was never charged, reportedly due to police corruption and his powerful connections. Wiretaps placed in his home during a later investigation captured chilling statements that seemed to reference the murder. "Supposin' I did kill the Black Dahlia," he was heard saying. "They couldn't prove it now." Though circumstantial, the case against Hodel has convinced many that he was the killer. Yet, without concrete evidence, the theory remains unproven, and the Black Dahlia's murderer officially remains unidentified. Detectives faced immense challenges as the case wore on. Forensic science in 1947 lacked the sophistication of today. No DNA testing, limited blood analysis, and primitive fingerprinting techniques. Witnesses contradicted one another, suspects provided false alibis, and the sheer number of false confessions, over 60 people claimed to be the killer, bogged down progress. Many of those confessions were dismissed quickly, but they added to the noise surrounding the case. In addition, the crime's brutality suggested medical knowledge, leading some to suspect a surgeon or pathologist. Yet the city was full of veterans returning from World War II with such training, broadening the suspect pool. The absence of a clear crime scene further complicated matters, as police could not determine where Elizabeth had been killed. Every lead seemed to dissolve into speculation. The frustration was palpable, with detectives working tirelessly but with little to show. Over time, the case grew colder, with fresh murders and scandals pushing the Black Dahlia off the front pages. But it never faded entirely. The public's appetite for the mystery ensured it remained alive, even as the trail itself went cold. Psychological profiles of the killer painted a disturbing portrait. Experts speculated that the precision of the mutilation indicated not just medical skill, but a sadistic personality with a need for control. The staging of the body, positioned in plain view as if on display, suggested exhibitionism and a desire to shock. Some theorists argued the crime was a message, perhaps tied to organized crime or Hollywood's darker underbelly. Others believed it was personal, driven by rage or rejection. Elizabeth herself was often unfairly scrutinized, her lifestyle and choices questioned as though they invited her fate. This victim-blaming narrative reflected the era's misogyny, where women who stepped outside traditional roles were easily vilified. In truth, the killer's motive remains as elusive as his identity. Whether it was an act of vengeance, psychopathy, or a twisted pursuit of notoriety, the Black Dahlia murder encapsulates the darkest aspects of human nature, where cruelty meets spectacle, and life is reduced to a grim performance for the world to witness. The city of Los Angeles itself became a character in the Black Dahlia case, a sprawling, glittering metropolis hiding corruption and vice beneath its sunny exterior. Hollywood promised fame, but for many, it delivered exploitation and ruin. Nightclubs doubled as hunting grounds for predators, and police corruption undermined justice. Some whispered that powerful men in the city shielded suspects, protecting reputations at the expense of truth. The LAPD of the 1940s was notoriously compromised, with officers linked to organized crime and political deals. Against this backdrop, Elizabeth Short's murder seemed both shocking and inevitable. An innocent caught in the gears of a city built on illusions. The noir films of the era, with their femmes fatales, shadowy streets, and corrupt cops, seemed to mirror reality. The Black Dahlia case blurred the line between cinema and life, its imagery as cinematic as any movie reel. Elizabeth became both victim and symbol, embodying the dangers of chasing dreams in a city that consumed the vulnerable. Her story revealed not just the cruelty of one killer, but the moral decay of an entire environment. As the years passed, detectives grew increasingly frustrated. Leads that once seemed promising dissolved under scrutiny. Suspects were cleared, files misplaced, and witnesses forgotten. Each time hope surfaced, it was quickly extinguished. The case was formally listed as unsolved, but it never truly closed. Cold case investigators revisited it over the decades, applying new techniques where possible, but the physical evidence had deteriorated, and many witnesses had died. Still, the Black Dahlia remained a touchstone in LAPD history, a reminder of both the limits of their power and the haunting permanence of unsolved crimes. For Elizabeth's family, the lack of closure was devastating. Her mother, Phoebe, lived the rest of her life without knowing who killed her daughter. The tragedy echoed across generations, leaving behind only speculation and sorrow. For the public, however, the mystery was oddly comforting, a puzzle without a solution that could be revisited endlessly, each theory adding another layer to the legend. Culturally, the Black Dahlia murder became more than a crime, it became a myth. Books, films, and television shows drew inspiration from Elizabeth's story, often blurring fact with fiction. Novelist James Ellroy, whose own mother was murdered in Los Angeles in 1958, famously fictionalized the case in his novel The Black Dahlia, later adapted into a film. The story appeared in documentaries, true crime anthologies, and countless amateur investigations online. Elizabeth Short herself was often portrayed as a symbol of lost innocence or Hollywood's destructive allure. Yet beneath the layers of mythology was a real woman, whose dreams, flaws, and humanity were overshadowed by the spectacle of her death. Her image, with dark curls and a hopeful smile, became iconic, forever frozen at the age of 22, her life reduced to a single haunting label. The Black Dahlia became less about who Elizabeth was, and more about what she represented. Beauty corrupted, innocence destroyed, and ambition betrayed by a cruel reality. I'm Jim Carrey. What can be? The Black Dahlia murder's legacy lies in its unresolved nature. Unlike other infamous crimes that eventually yielded answers, Elizabeth's case endures as a question mark. Theories abound. George Hodel organized crime figures, anonymous psychopaths, but none have been proven. Some believe the case could still be solved with modern forensic science should overlooked evidence resurface. Others argue that too much time has passed, that the truth lies buried with the suspects long dead. What remains undeniable is the power of the story. Every retelling breathes life into the mystery, keeping Elizabeth's memory alive even as it twists into legend. The case is a reminder of the fragility of justice and the enduring fascination with unsolved crimes. It speaks to humanity's need for closure, our compulsion to explain the inexplicable. Yet perhaps part of the Black Dahlia's power is that it defies explanation, leaving us unsettled and haunted, just as Los Angeles was in 1947. More than 70 years later, Elizabeth Short is remembered not only for the gruesome manner of her death, but also for the person she was before tragedy claimed her. Friends described her as kind, witty, and determined. A woman who loved life despite its hardships. She was not the femme fatale the press painted her to be, nor the tragic starlet some imagine. She was a young woman navigating a difficult world with dreams that were cruelly cut short. To reduce her to a victim is to deny her humanity. Her true legacy lies in the conversations her story continues to inspire about misogyny, media exploitation, and the dangers of unchecked power. The Black Dahlia is not merely a mystery, it is a cautionary tale about how society treats women, especially those who dare to dream in a world that preys on vulnerability. Elizabeth Short's story reminds us that behind every headline, every myth, there is a real person who deserved far more than they received. And so the legend of the Black Dahlia endures, a ghost haunting the streets of Los Angeles. The vacant lot where her body was found is now unremarkable, yet for those who know the story, it carries an invisible weight. Tourists still seek it out, true crime enthusiasts trace her final steps, and storytellers reimagine her fate. Each generation rediscovers Elizabeth Short, drawn to the unanswered questions and the chilling image of her final moments. Her story embodies the intersection of beauty and horror, aspiration and despair. It is both a relic of a bygone era and a timeless reflection of humanity's darkest curiosities. The Black Dahlia remains an unsolved riddle, a mystery that refuses resolution. Perhaps that is why she lingers in the collective imagination, because the unknown is more powerful than the known, and the unanswered question more enduring than the solution. Elizabeth Short lives on, not in the fame she sought, but in the shadowy immortality of legend.